Timer's over. You made it, just totally made it. You're fine. All right, we will go ahead and get started this evening. Mr. Sato.
Okay, you bet. Yep. I did just create a document to just capture a little bit where we've been, what we've done the last couple of days, what the key issues seem to be, and put together a little overview there. And I thought that could be on the screen if anybody's viewing, wants to kind of see what we're talking about. That can structure our conversation a little, but obviously we can talk about things that aren't out here too. But I just mentioned the last couple of days administratively, we've been meeting discussing how to make it possible to return to full-time on-site at the elementary level beginning January 20th. Monday I shared some of the obstacles to getting this done and made a recommendation based on feedback from meetings that we did in the fall in each building, as well as administrator input. Since Monday's meeting, I know you've gotten lots of additional input, feedback, whatever you want to call it. There's an elementary teacher survey that was created by an elementary teacher, and 84 of the 163 district teachers responded to that, with 83% favoring staying with the current instructional model. I know we've all received various comments from parents and staff with questions, concerns, viewpoints. And on Wednesday too, just to kind of add to the conversation, I did hear an Iowa Association of School Boards lobbyist say that the governor strongly supports a full-day on-site option for all parents, and she wouldn't be surprised if the legislature takes it up. So that's for a little additional context. And tonight we want to update you with some details about how we try to address some of those obstacles we mentioned Monday. And I'll focus a little more on the structural challenges because some of those things there just aren't great answers to. You know, some of those concerns, the social, emotional, mental health concerns. You know, we do have an employee assistance program. We do have a wellness page. You know, we're trying to support, but we can't really take away stress or concern for people. And then associate sub-coverage, those things are just challenging. So, you know, I can't really offer a pat answer to some of those things either. One of the things that got asked about last board meeting that I didn't have a great answer to on Monday night, other than to say there will be challenges, but I think we can do it, was transportation. And that would require, you know, running a second route in the afternoon if we had different levels on different time schedules. Mr. Swartz has prepared a lot of great information and estimated to me that it would be around $30,000 of expense for a quarter. That's higher than the number there that is just for the salary, because there would be a few special education routes, there would be fuel cost, of course, things like that, but I'll let Ron speak to that. And then something else that came up kind of since Monday was you know, a strong desire on the part of teachers not to lose all collaboration time. So the suggestion to address that, I put it under transportation, would be that we could have a Wednesday early out, but you'd want to make that the same time for all buildings, or that would be impossible transportation. So that's kind of the quick capsule for transportation. Ron, I don't know if you want to fill in some blanks or give me more details than that.
Not to bore you to death, but what we would do is we'd actually have two transfers at the middle school. The first one would be between the middle school and the high school. We'd bring the 4 buses that we have at the high school now. We'd bring them over. All the other buses would be already over here. We'd transfer them to the right bus to take home. When they're done with that middle school, high school run, then the ones that do the elementary transfer would go right to the elementary schools. So then they would be ready to transfer all the elementary kids back to the middle school again, and we'll put them on the right bus to go back home. At this point, for the 9 weeks, I didn't really think it'd be worth changing a bunch of bus numbers for these kids because it's just confusing for them. So if we keep them on the same bus, same number, same transfer, it'd just be so much easier for the kids because they already know that. The biggest problem would be on the Wednesday. If we don't get out at the same time on a Wednesday, we almost need an hour, hour and a half to get the things turned around to get back to where we need to be for the transfer, the second transfer. So it can be done. You know, there's an additional cost to it, but like I said, it won't be extremely stressful. We'd have to get some new times for the elementary kids when they go home. So, but that's what we do.
Ron?
Question I have is, does that put any of our drivers over the 28 hours a week, which takes us to health insurance?
Probably not, because they would get, some of them right now are leaving the shop at about, probably 10 to 1 to go out to Wilder and get the transfer kids and come in, where they won't start till 1:30, and the high school buses will start about a quarter after 1. So we'd gain 20, 30 minutes there, and when they start, they would just be on a continuous clock. So it won't be the middle school, high school, you get 2 hours for that, and then when you take the elementary homes, you get 2 hours for that, so it won't be a 4-hour day. Once they start, they just stay clocked in until they finish their route. Because right now, a route is, they're guaranteed 2 hours a day.
And 2 hours in the morning?
Yes.
Okay, so 6 hours, okay.
So, and then when you throw Wednesday in there, if that's you wouldn't have that, the last column over here is kind of my best guess on what would be added to each one of those routes. So, your Wednesday, we wouldn't have that extra hours on the end of it, because everyone would be getting out at the same time. So they'd be pushing 28, some of them maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'd be there. And then, unfortunately, now we don't have the trips that we had at one time either. So that knocks off a lot of hours for the drivers too.
So, I'm not sure how it works, but if a driver was doing the regular, way we're talking about doing it, and did trips, that would take them over that 28 hours a week, wouldn't it?
Occasionally on maybe a given week, yes.
Okay, occasionally. Thank you.
But in terms of the insurance piece too, there's a look-back period, right? So over time, they probably still would be fine.
They have to average 30 hours, I think, per quarter.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Any other questions for Mr. Schwartz?
I just have a question. The estimated cost, is that with counting that we would have everybody have an early out on Wednesday, or is that 5 days of the,
it's early out on Wednesdays.
is concluded? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all your work.
No problem.
Thank you.
Mr. Schwartz is a very good planner and problem solver. You know, I looked at this and that's good enough, and I said, I don't think we're gonna need that much detail if we know it works, so.
I just got one
We'll get in there.
quick
Thank
question. When the buses weren't running last year, do you remember approximately how much was saved last year when buses were not running?
I would,
You had some for the meals that ran the sack
Right,
lunches, but
fuel costs, I think we were around 15,000.
how much?
15,000. And just fuel costs that, and then, the wear and tear on the buses are sitting there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Which one?
Just fold this table up just in case people want to spread out a little bit more. Up here.
Have a good holiday.
Me too.
Oh, Merry
everybody.
Christmas.
I don't want to make a habit of this.
Oh.
Next thing I put on there was specials instruction, and this was identified as a little bit of an issue because we have shared special staff, particularly between Whittier and Laura Ingalls Wilder. But the elementary principals did go teacher by teacher and look at sections taught and who would have the most time available to make it work. I think the plan would be to have that be asynchronous instruction, meaning whatever time they could find time to record something for students, they would, and then it'd be there, it'd be pushed out. I know as we discussed Monday too that, no disrespect to the specials, but in terms of the time, that was a secondary concern to, reading, math, whatever. But so this would be a way that we can get specials to all our remote learners asynchronously. And then, I don't know, would there still be a set time for specials even though it's asynchronous for those kids, or would it be an access it when you can thing for remote learners? Okay. So there's actually, when you talk about blended and flipped instruction and asynchronous instruction, it's actually one of the benefits. If you have it recorded, you can go watch it whenever, watch it more than once. So it takes away probably, the little bit of that personal real-time interaction, but that's a workable solution.
And other schools are doing that, because I've seen
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you want to, Annette, did I explain that thoroughly enough or anything else on that point? Or?
That's been identified for quite some time on there. It was just that concern of, looking at workloads and how that would look for those.
We did also talk about intervention time, and I know you heard from at least one of our reading intervention teachers, and this is it's a schedule crunch. It's a concern. I think what would need to happen, and again, jump in here if I'm oversimplifying, but I think as kids came back full-time on site, those intervention teachers would just need to make sure that they're compressing their schedule enough that they have a reserved time to give interventions for remote kids. So for example, right now with the 1:30 out, they're connecting with remote learners later in the afternoon. Well, even after kids come back, they'd have to maintain that practice. They'd have to make sure they're scheduling their on-site kids and leaving themselves enough time to connect with remote learners. Is that okay? I don't know if that makes sense, or you need any more detail there. I don't, again, the nitty-gritty of this, where, I think an individual teacher is probably going to have to go down their roster of kids they interact with, see when they can get a hold of the kids who are on site, and it's not going to be as simple as I just made it sound, but that's the basics of it.
And that time would be equitable between the remote learners and the on-site learners?
I think it would need to be. So again, that's why they're going to have to really guard that set-aside time.
Are these, after talking to some people, that I could be told, are these some of the teachers that still cover recess?
I don't know that.
Are these like our reading specialist?
That's the kind of person I'm referring to.
Is this
yeah.
who you're referring to?
A title teacher or an at-risk reading teacher. Yep.
Okay, because I know that several of those do cover recess duty. And just a food for thought.
Again, that'll be something they'll have to figure out at the building level if they can't afford that duty time in their schedule. And that was one of the concerns that was expressed too. I think it was by one of our associates. Just that idea of coverage when you lengthen that day back out might get difficult in some areas. But the building principal would have to figure that out. If that reading interventionist, for example, did not have time in the school day to do a duty, they had to see kids during that time, they'd have to find somebody else.
I talked to Ballard, Linda McCormick at Ballard, and she's a special reading teacher. And she also does online learning for K through first. And they pull their instructional coaches in to cover different areas. And they go to 3 and they make it work. And she said they just have to work together, but she gets all of hers done and she doesn't stay after school. But the instructional coaches come down and they help. They actually do an online learning class every day. And it's the science and social studies or math or whatever. It's 2 subjects. So, and Southeast Warren, they Zoom in. So they don't have online learners. They have online learners, but they have to Zoom in at 8:10 every day. And their computer or whatever it is, it faces the teacher and the board. And when they go to specials, then they have to Zoom in with the special teacher. And so they're always connected all day long. It's not just an hour every day. They're connected all day. So I thought that was interesting.
Any other thoughts on intervention time there? Any other questions?
So if the kids so you're thinking that the kids that are coming back to school from online learning, that if they're in an intervention, they need to find a class to attend. So if they're not seeing a group that fits the group that that one is in, they need to start a new group.
I think there
Is that-
probably could be some readjustment of groups as, you know, if kids do come back, I think that'd be accurate.
Right, but we need to leave them at least an hour at the end of the day or so too.
Yeah, I think it just depends, how many on their roster, how many they're serving that they have are
Right,
remote.
right, okay.
And that can change at the winter time because that winter fast, or you were asking about that at that last meeting, when they retest again, that'll be coming up again. And so that could cause, you know, some more shifting of what those groups would look like or who are in those groups when the winter screening occurs.
That's the end of January, the
Yeah.
quarter, or the beginning of January?
It's the beginning of January, I believe, into February.
Special education services, we talked quite a bit about on Monday, and we revisited some things that we had looked at previously, and then also went down some new roads. Instructional coaches, I know we're asked about with special ed, and we have 3 with some kind of special ed certification. 2 of them, it's a secondary certification. 1 of them's out on leave. We did take a look too at other staff with certification. We don't see a good transfer prospect there. There's either a lack of elementary special education experience, or in one case there's a situation where the instructor would really struggle with the technology piece of it. I think we'd be setting that person up to fail. And if we did transfer a classroom teacher, you know, there are dominoes there too. We would have to backfill that position. You know, you would have in an elementary classroom maybe 23 or 25 kids, you know, suddenly having a long-term sub instead of their teacher to move their teacher to an area where, you know, they're not really experienced. So we took a person by person look at that, but the answer wasn't any different than what we looked at previously. Now we have a couple of areas we're exploring right now. It's happening. Mimi's having conversations, and you know, do not have a definite answer tonight. I know she's set to have a couple of conversations again tomorrow morning. So the other areas we're looking at are the applicant pool for special ed openings we have for next year, and then the people that we have who aren't in a classroom right now but are people who have done long-term subbing for us that might have that experience and certification. So we are still, we're looking for options there. I don't know if you give any further update than what I just said, maybe, or if you want to add anything to that, or if that kind of catches it.
You know, just as far as a recruiting process goes, you give as much information as you can, and we've got a couple of people that are considering that virtual position, and you know, the ball's in their court right now just to gauge their interest level. You know, offers have been presented, but a couple of people that we would be willing to put in that seat if they're interested. So, and I should know more in the morning for both.
So that is something that, I mean, very timely. We've had postings open, we've had interviews scheduled, we've been you know, trying to fill that position as we go. So I would say we're farther along 3 days later than we were Monday night.
Is this the one you posted Monday?
Well, Derek has had a position open at Irving for next year, so we looked at that applicant pool. One of the people that I'm talking seriously with isn't available until January 20th, so we have to you know, put some pieces together up to that point and to get that candidate up to speed. The other candidate is committed to a couple of things, so again, we would have to rearrange. But it's you know, nobody has applied for the job that I posted on Monday. So it's people that have applied other places or are currently long-term subbing, and it's just reaching out and saying, hey, would you have any interest?
One figure I don't think we've ever asked, and I haven't seen, from the figures at the bottom of what you gave us, we've got 126 remote learners in elementary, if my math was right. Do we know how many of those are special ed? That would require this, what we need.
Yeah, I mean, at one time, and I think we gave an aggregate, and I know we reported on the number of special ed remote learners once because I remember the number was 72, but that was K-12.
I do have the numbers.
Do you have that number two? Can you, okay, Annette, can you look it up?
So for special education at the elementary, currently there's 27 students. 18 have been consistently remote. 2 of them are a level 3 and 1 is a level 0, but probable remote roster of maybe 15 moving forward if there's a consistent commitment to being remote. Because 2 are on quarantine right now and 7 have done remote and on-site this semester. So there's about a few that might be 3 weeks here, 3 weeks there, and have been much more variable. So, but 27 currently.
And that is, Annette's comment about consistent remote learners is important. We are going to be asking parents for a long-term commitment to stay remote, which we just have to manage things well. So we'll be asking for a 9-week commitment if they plan to be remote, and we'll be treating quarantine kids then, those kind of temporary absences. I think Ben commented on it Monday night. We'll be treating that more like any other kinds of absences that come up like that, an extended illness or a vacation or whatever. Those kids will be still connected to their classroom, their homeroom teacher, and that'll be better because then once we get dedicated remote instructors, they're not going to probably be perfectly in sync with the classroom anyway, and it'll be probably less confusing for the kid to stay one place and get support from the classroom teacher. So that's a work in progress, but that's the plan there.
I know that was a pretty common theme with the survey results I looked at. What would the expectations of the classroom teacher be with those quarantined kids? I mean, a little more detail.
Well, my comment has been, as we started talking about this, about taking the quarantine kids out of the remote mix, which it makes sense on a lot of levels, but that's a holdover of the fact that we've been as flexible as we can be on every count so far. So what would the expectations of teachers be? My comment was, I want there to be a little more for a quarantine kid because those situations could be a couple weeks or more depending on exposure and when they're cleared. I want it to be a little more than just say your assignments are on class pages. I mean, they need to be able to find their work. That's another reason I would really advocate, if we go back full-time on site, I would really advocate for that 90 minutes Wednesday. Previously we had an hour early out on Wednesday in a normal year. To make the transportation work, we need a little more than that anyway. But that would possibly give a teacher time, some of that 90 minutes if they have a quarantine student, well, there could be a connection time for them. Now, we have 23 students total quarantine grades K-5, so it's likely that at any given time a lot of teachers won't have a quarantine student. But
And a quarantine would last no more than 10 days?
Well, it
28.
kind of varies. 10 to 14 is the norm. Now, you can get that 10 down to 7 even, I think, with a negative test, with no further exposures, with following all the mitigation efforts. Where it gets tough is if there's another exposure during that time, or if parents, which smaller kids is frequently the case, if parents are not able to isolate from their younger student, then actually the parents' 10 days are up, and then the kid's quarantine starts. So it can get quite long. And that's one of the concerns you heard from the gentleman the other night. But just to remind people, the school district is not trying to make it tough for anybody, and I don't want the responsibility. I don't have the statutory authority to determine quarantine period. I don't want that responsibility. So, we take our cue from Warren County Health Services and what the parents are able to do. Mr. Coffey had an example in his household where I'm probably violating HIPAA, do you mind if I share? Mr. Coffey had a situation where 3 of the 5 members of his household ended up being positive. The other 2 were able to isolate. So did you end up with some different quarantine periods for your kids?
Yeah, we did, because we had 2 test positive right away, and then we isolated immediately, but then somehow one of the other kids got it. So then that extended my time and our first grader's time as well. So it is weird how that works out.
So, I'm
glad you brought up the PLC. I think that just got lost in the conversation on Monday, but I do agree with you, that's a very important piece. If we do go back to full days, if those teachers have that collaborative time.
And that came out strongly in the building meetings that were held right after
I just
Monday's
assumed
meeting.
if we're going back to 305.
Yeah, I did.
I did too, I assumed
I
that.
didn't think about them not having it. I
Well, we
just
did,
assumed
you
we
know,
would.
I think actually the motion might have said something about going back to the originally approved calendar, which did have an early out Wednesday, but again, that was an hour. To make this work, if we're gonna have different levels, different times, we're gonna have to have it be 90 minutes, but.
Again,
I
just a
think
little more
everyone's good with that.
clarification on the quarantine. Would they, I know you said they have a little bit higher level of expectation than a typical kid that may be sick for several days. I mean, are we talking Zoom or just following up on class pages, or what is your definition of?
I think it's really gonna come down to what the student needs. You know, and I think, you know, we have teachers that if they know a student needs more support or is struggling, they're gonna go above and beyond for them. That's what our staff does. I don't know that we'll have a set, like with the remote learning, you know, we've had set expectations about how often teachers need to Zoom or whatever. I don't think it's necessarily something like that. But I hope they're, at the very least, for example, if you know you have a quarantine student, they're gonna be out for 2 weeks. Hopefully there's a contact made saying, hey, your assignments will be here. I can be available during this time, or, you know, if you can't hit that time, you have a question, please email me, I'll get back to you. I mean, I'm thinking more normal support communication stuff than I am trying to put in a whole new kind of set of rules or expectations.
One other thing I saw in that information we got was there were several comments about the time it took to put together the packets and the assignments. I guess I don't really understand what all goes into that. Is there a way to, I guess, do that more efficiently or better to help the classroom teacher in that situation, since it is a little different than having a kid sick for 1 or 2 days, which they mean they could be out for weeks?
I don't know if I know the best answer to that. I haven't been involved, I saw the comment as well. I haven't been directly involved in that process, other than to see how they have it set up in the elementary vestibules, which I think they're doing about as well as they can. I mean, they've got a folder system, and parents, you know, pick up and drop off, and it seems to be going pretty well. But in terms of the preparation of those packets, I don't know, anybody else have any?
Is that something that the instructional coaches per building can help with that? I mean, if they just communicate with the teachers and ask them what they need, sometimes it could be as easy as just printing off some packets.
I'm sure they're open to all those conversations.
To help out with
Every
the parents.
conversation that we've had with any of the TLC positions, especially the coaches, is that they have been more than willing to step up and meet the needs of the district. And that's been their biggest concern, is that they've been viewed as not wanting to do that in some way. And we've just simply been trying to follow the process recommended by the Department of Ed by going through our TLC committees, using their data, and adjusting as we go through the year. So our coaches are there for the teachers, and that's what that role is for, is to support and lead. In terms of the packets and the time, I think it's that double piece of trying to scan things and put it on their class pages, but then also having copies. And with the numbers of the remote students right now, again, our plan was designed to be flexible. So our numbers might be very low considerably right now, but if it spreads, right, then that increases the work time of creating packets. But for right now, 25 across all 4 elementaries. I don't think any one teacher, or you might have the numbers in front of you, I don't, but I don't think anybody has more than 2. Many have 0, there might be 1 in some cases. So,
Do you guys happen to know how high it was a few weeks ago when the state of Iowa hit its high mark?
I mean, I'm not keeping historical data on the.
I didn't know if have we been this high before at
and see,
25?
that's where that ebb and flow goes to where it might feel manageable. or
Total
would.
number of kids, we're at 23, total number quarantined. Well, I know we were higher right away with the exposure at Irving, because that was 24 in one class.
Right.
We have new legislation and, you know, our mask mandates have been ongoing. I think we hardly.
I would guess there was probably a time before the change in contact tracing rules that we were higher than that too. I mean, 23 is when you think of, that's an average of, you know, less than 6 per elementary building.
Are we allowing volunteers yet back in where PTO could help with packet? Like, I know that some classroom teachers have some really helpful citizens that come in and help.
We really haven't opened back up yet, but I think that's something that I'd be open to. But something like that where you know, they were gonna be in the office making copies, making packets or something, I wouldn't have qualms about that. That's something we can talk about with principals too.
I would just be a little hesitant too, because we do have staff that, you know, are scared and vulnerable, and so the more we open the doors, you know, the more anxious they get about the virus too. So just be considerate of that. But I mean, we have across the whole district, we have 7 kindergartens quarantined, and that's the highest grade. I mean, there's only 1 in first grade, so I think the numbers are really low, and I haven't seen any kind of a spike after the Thanksgiving holiday. I just keep waiting, and it's not happening, and I've just decided it's not going to. And you know,
Our county positivity rate's been very steady. It's 15.7%. You know, and we had a time right before Thanksgiving, the same time period you're talking about, we'd gotten up into the low 20s, and it's gone back down. Our positive cases, Mimi told me she updated today, and we're less than 5 staff members, and I think you said 12 students. So, you know.
What's the delivery model for the packets now? Is it through Power School, or how are they?
Well,
Hard copies?
Or if you, I mean, is there an option, or I guess what's the delivery method to get those to a quarantine student?
There are hard copies available in the vestibules. That's I know remote learners are doing that. Quarantine, I believe the expectation is to have the work uploaded to the class page too, isn't it?
The quarantine kids I had, I went and picked it up first thing Monday morning from Irving.
Okay.
And then the dad turned it in on that Friday, but we picked it up every Monday morning, a hard copy.
I think it was our speaker on Monday. I think part of his frustration with the quarantine, if I recall right, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the delivery of, I believe he said it was in Power School. I could be wrong. I can't remember all the systems. But I'm just wondering, I mean, has that been looked into? Is there a more fluid?
Well, I think especially if we're going to treat quarantine students now not as remote students, but as members of the class who are out, and we're saying go to class pages to Power School for your work. I mean, they'll have to be there. And I think maybe it's been inconsistently placed there before. I mean, ideally it would have been there for remote learners too, even if they were picking up hard copies just as another way to access. I don't know, Ray, or anything more on that? Or
I can say it's not been consistent as far as whether they've been uploaded or not. That was originally what we were doing. I think somehow that became a little inconsistent when people started with the paper packets. So we did have, at least one of the principals have had a conversation about that and looking into getting those packets uploaded as well. I think some are doing it, some are not.
I have a question about the class pages. So I'm assuming remote teachers will be responsible for the class pages for their remote students.
Yeah, yes.
Right, so they'll have people work with them to figure out how to do the class pages for their remote students. So
yeah, and we'll have, there'll be a whole kind of introduction process of them, and
They've been doing that since last week.
okay, I thought they were, but I was just clarifying. I just wanted to make sure that was.
Set up, there'll have to be more set up if this change goes from early grades to full, because then they take on more subjects. But their training plan has been in place, and they've been going at it hard this whole week, trying to get ready, so.
How soon would parents be notified to let them know that they need to commit to the 9-week period, and also that their child's teacher may be changing if they are remote?
yeah, we hope to put something out tomorrow.
Okay.
I know Mrs. Duran has worked on a draft communication already, and throughout all this, we've tried to give people notice and not have a bunch of surprises.
So when are you gonna make them to make that decision? When will they, by January?
Well, we'll need to know. I don't have a deadline in mind. We'll need to know before the semester starts. I don't know.
It'd be nice to know that by the middle of January, before the semester starts.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, it'd be great to have them come back from holiday break knowing and letting us know.
Any other questions from any board members? Carolyn, you have anything you've been thinking?
I was thinking through everything. There's no obvious answers, I mean, that's the thing.
So-
One thing I was gonna just say as a whole, which is kind of being really obvious, but I mean, I think as a board, our duty is to kind of challenge and have these tough discussions, even if wherever we land, you know, we periodically need to have these conversations, and I do really appreciate the emails that we get and the input, and, you know, I think it's, I don't know, our duty to try to do what's best for the students and to push for it, and if we can't get through the logistics of it quite yet, I think we just, every now and then, you know, keep asking the tough questions, so I think these are good conversations. I think we do have to come out pretty clear that we are asking for commitment regardless of what we decide with maybe what people consider the bigger decision, that they're committing to a quarter. Yeah.
Any questions, Ken?
No, you know, it's a frustrating situation. You know, I'll have to say that. First of all, our enemy, the virus, will still be with us, I think, for the next 3 months. For everything I read, it's going to take a long time to get, you know, people vaccinated and all that. We do know that what we've seen in schools is kids not really transferring it in school. The readings I see in popular press has it saying students are much more affected by their parents than they are by the kids in the school. Doesn't mean it doesn't affect things a lot. The numbers of online learners who are quarantined per elementary teacher strikes me as pretty low. You know, because we got 11 sections down, that 55 teachers and 126 kids, you know, on the remote, you know, so no teachers affected by that much. We had said, and we've been talking for, I don't know, it's 3 meetings, 5 meetings, I can't go back, about kids coming back. We haven't hidden that from anybody. Might have to listen to the meetings. I mean, some of it's not that newsworthy. And up until the other night, kind of what we've been going for was kids all day in school. Made a big point of saying that was our intent. So I've had a little trouble with some of the emails I get from the teachers. No, this is what we're saying we wanted to do. And then what looks like happened as we listened more and more, or were able to find out the problems that came with that were at the middle and high school because of the nature of the classes and all of that. Teachers don't change well, but all we're asking is for them to go back to what they did last year, was teach full time. There's nothing new. This was the job they've had for years. Am I right about that? Am I saying anything different? With the small angle of the quarantine students. So we're not asking anything strange. Personally, I'd rather not change, but I can sure understand how other people wouldn't agree with me on that. I'd be tempted to say, hey, this is great. Let me make the motion and I'll make a fourth quarter, not third, you know. So those are thoughts I've got, but it's still here. It's not going to affect the relationship between, there's not that many are going to lose their relationship with the teacher that they've had all the time. But the important thing, education is the relationship between the teacher and the student. But I don't see the numbers saying that that's really going to be destroyed for a lot of kids. Okay. Ambivalent feelings still.
And I guess I was just surprised that the teachers didn't know about it, because we hired somebody, I know December 2nd, and we just heard this week back from them. So I don't know why the teachers didn't know this was happening or why they thought we were hiring online teachers if we weren't going to go back full-time, because what would have been the point to hire them?
We haven't talking about and exploring it for quite a while. I mean, the listening post that we did now, that was back October, end of October maybe, and at that time we talked about the possibility, and we were gathering input on it. So I think, like most things, you know, there's a point at which it becomes, it's not talk anymore, and it's real, or it's a decision point.
Right.
And in terms of, you know, Mr. Breslin's comment about, you know, we're just asking them to do what they've done before. Yes, but there's nothing that feels the same this year. And I know that's not, I know that's not just education, and I understand other things too.
Right, I mean, I understand they don't read the board minutes I understand that completely.
And, you know, schools do tend to get compartmentalized or siloed because we all, throughout the whole organization, we all have such different roles, and we're all focused on, you know, trying to do the best with our thing. And you know, as board members, you see things through different lenses than administration then teachers, and teachers then support staff, because we all have such different roles too. So
yeah, I just didn't know why it was such a surprise, because I thought surely they knew that we'd hired online teachers, and so that's why I just didn't understand why it was a surprise.
Yeah, right. I think that's my biggest frustration is the time. You know, I think our job, number one, is to ensure quality education for our kids. I don't think that comes, you know, at all costs. 1A is the health and, you know, the well-being of our staff, because they're the drivers of that education. And I think it's important everybody's involved in this decision, but what frustrates me is I came home from our meeting Monday night and into Tuesday, and it seems that there was this message that this was brand new, and we've been talking about this since October. So somewhere along the line there was a catastrophic failure of communication in the buildings. And this should not have been a surprise. We should have got this feedback 2 months ago, not this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And that frustrates me greatly. Because when we make decisions, I think it's important to have all the information. And this information should have been coming in months ago, not 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Even the transportation stuff.
Other than the transportation.
Yeah, through the organized network of principals,
Right.
not teachers doing their own survey.
And so we had open discussions about these online teachers with the intent they would teach all of the online courses, right? So I guess to clarify a few points, if we do move in this direction, the online teachers that we just hired would take on the 4 academic disciplines and teach those online to elementary students. Is that, am I understanding?
And that's always been the plan if we were back to full days on site.
Okay.
You know, the plan that was laid out Monday was contingent on if we were staying with a shortened day.
Okay. And then we've already clarified the other point, the early out, and then the quarantine. We've talked about that. So if we were to go back on-site full-time, the teachers would not have any more online teaching responsibility. They would handle their quarantine students as absences and still have their PLC time at early out at 1:30 every Wednesday. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I would say so. One thing I would clarify. I think there is a prevailing feeling with a lot of elementary teachers. I just want to forget this online learning stuff like a nightmare. Have nothing to do with it. I mean, because it was such a change to what they were used to doing, and it has. There definitely have been growing pains. I would say, as a district, I don't think we want to lose any skills we've built, and we've had a technology goal in this district for at least 11 years, technology growth and integration, and we've expanded our digital learning environment. We did that systematically from high school to middle school, and then when this hit, we've got the order in for K-5, as everybody knows. So I do think we want to continue to build skills that way. I don't think there's going to be less call for personalized learning ever as we go along. And ideally, whether a student is on-site, remote, or quarantined, I think we ought to be able to use PowerSchool as a tool to see what's going on. And I don't know if I'm articulating this perfectly, maybe you want to add something, Ray, or somebody else. So I'm not saying no, I'm saying yes, generally that's right, but I don't want people to think, oh, good, no more technology ever.
I just want to make sure, yeah, and I totally agree with that point. I just want to make sure I'm not missing something. So if we went on site full time, the classroom teachers would not be teaching online anymore this year. So assumption would be the students would get more of their attention. And the online learners would now have a full-time teacher devoted to them all day long. So the assumption would be they're going to get a better education out of this. Am I missing something?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you have more dedicated time. I do think, there are things we still need to work out, the considerations we've been talking about all the way along in terms of how we support everybody's needs.
Right. And obviously the hurdle is still the special education piece. That's a giant hurdle. But as far as all the other pieces, I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing something that, I mean, I don't want to make the teacher's job any harder than it needs to be, and that's why I just wanted to make sure I'm not missing something that they want to be asked to do.
Ray or anything to add to?
The only thing I'll add is I think you kind of already said this, but I do think it's important not to lose the momentum that we've already made in our growth of technology. When you think about next year, I say next year, maybe it'll be yet this year that the Chromebooks come in and our teachers start using those in the classroom. Those skills they've learned, we really don't want to just cut it off and stop doing anything, because then when they go to use it more later this year and next year, it's just going to get that much more difficult.
But that gets handled kind of through curriculum. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and if we have a snow day, if they all have Chromebooks,
Yeah.
they can do it, we don't have to, we can
But
have it on.
And I think it'll be, honestly, I think it'll be a little bit easier for the elementary when we do have Chromebooks and treating it on a regular basis. But I would just say, we still want our kids to be able to use those resources, for snow days, for example. We've talked about that. It'll be virtual days next year. We don't want it to be a struggle for the kids to get into that stuff later down the road. So I just don't want us to lose that momentum.
And so the 2 points I would want to make is that, from the beginning of this, it has been crucial that time is a resource, and we were providing that to teachers. So I think that is why that Wednesday, at a minimum, is crucial, to have that time not only for the PLC collaboration, but it extends that time a little bit more for some connection with quarantine kids if a teacher has that student. But we've also been very cognizant about our teachers have families that might be disrupted too. It's not just their regular work day, but they might have spouses that are unemployed. They might have kids who are struggling with the changes too. And so that piece of it, and trying to take care of everybody as a family and a community. I don't disagree with some of the communication concerns, and I think that falls back to we need a stronger external and internal communication plan. We've got new roles. This rolled out this fall from going to, a class being quarantined, then a teacher quarantined, and, 6th grade, being remote. And then we moved into, well, what if we went to full back on site? Then the snow day plans rolled in. And then we said, well, what if we have to go full remote? So it has been a constant ebb and flow of trying to get input, revise plans, come back.
So do the principals get this information after a normal board meeting? Is this rolled out on the Thursday meetings, or do they just not know? That's why I'm kind of lost.
We have logged countless hours of return to learn conversation.
So the principals knew we were hiring these 5 people or whatever it was for that purpose?
Absolutely. Before we had the job descriptions and we're talking about roles and skills that we need and everything, the principals are involved in those
They
conversations.
clearly understood the intent was that they would teach the online portion and try to get us back.
Well, I'd argue that, because when they presented, I'm not trying to be argumentative, but, when they presented it Monday, it was that they're teaching 2 of the 4 classes, and we were thinking something different, so there
Yeah.
was a disconnect.
Well, I think that came in with the uncertainty of whether or not we'd be back full-time. I mean, that was presented as a scenario if we stayed with the early out.
If we kept that early release, in order for them to do 2 subjects and 2 different grade levels,
Okay.
it would be very hard to then also fit in science and social studies. at that same point in time. So there are like two different scenarios there. And again, I would not go back and say this is a lapse of communication just for principals. We're supposed to be a team. We're the administrative team. And if that needs to be tightened up and going back to those, again, external, internal communication plans, that's what we need to do.
I would like to see that
Just to clarify, I'm not upset. I love to hear from the teachers. I want to hear from the teachers, good, bad, whatever. I'm not upset that we got this at 2 p.m. I am upset that they seemed to be surprised by this.
Right.
And this should have been a conversation we were having in October with the teachers if there were concerns to work through them. So I guess Art and you guys have been in education for a long time. If this is doable, what's best for the kids?
Okay, but I still don't quite connect the dots. You know, what you say I totally agree with.
Yeah.
But I felt like the hang-up, which we spent a lot of time on Monday, is the fact that we aren't able to support the online kids that have the special needs.
Right, and I think
And that's why I mean, it's like, to me, I always felt like if we got that piece, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
But until we get that piece,
Yep.
I don't know if we've got everything lined up yet.
I agree, that's the hang-up right
Right,
now.
but yeah.
I'm just asking, if we could solve that piece of this puzzle, what's best, to continue down this path or to get kids in school all day?
But you don't know till tomorrow morning, correct? Is that what your feelings are?
I have one conversation tomorrow morning and one just got moved to tomorrow afternoon, so. But,
You think you'll have answers, or do you just not know, like many discussions go?
you know, ball's in their court. I have both good candidates. I don't know. I don't know their personal situations to have any
Okay.
idea what direction that they'll go.
You know, then again, as motions are made, it can be to do this. Somebody could make a motion to take the elementary back to all day, pending
And
satisfactory.
Special needs.
The solution is special thing, and at least 3 weeks' notice to parents. So this could drag on, you know, if you can't solve it tomorrow, excuse me, if it doesn't work out tomorrow.
I just want to address, because I know Carolyn made this point on Monday, what's good is a survey if we don't really
Can't do it.
acknowledge it or listen to it. But
Or
I
we
do
can't
find
do
it very interesting that 84 teachers responded and 79 teachers didn't take the survey. So,
That was a pretty quick
so
turnaround. I don't remember exactly when the survey went out.
Went out Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So
and
yeah,
that
it's
was-
83%, but we have half of the teachers basically that didn't respond
Yep.
at all. And who knows why, for what reason, but
Yeah,
I just think that's,
tells you something about
Worth saying.
what they thought was important in that
Right.
one.
And I-
yes, whether it was important or not.
And I read every single one of those comments, and perhaps some of the opposition is just wrapped up in confusion because
Right.
this was
Well, and there was a lot, yeah.
less than a week ago.
And when confusion starts, nobody knows even where to go to get the truth. And I think that's where a lot of it, so we don't all need to say it in our own words, what you said, Ben. I think you laid out how I feel anyways, as far as the last 3 days.
I'd like to say that in the meetings that we did have with the buildings, it was very loud and clear. If you take the remote piece away, bring us back, we're fine. And so in doing that, they're still saying that they aren't. So that I think that's where, my confusion is we're doing what you wanted to do, and now you still don't want to get out early, or you still don't want to come back full time. So
you believe the message was communicated?
I do. That was the
We
message they
absolutely, we had
communicated to
conversations with
us.
every single building, and Mimi attended 4 of the 6 buildings, and I attended 3, either in person or virtually. And we did communicate back out findings from that, and I'll take responsibility for internal or external communication problems, but I can tell you that I personally have worked pretty hard at that. There are a lot of people to communicate with, and this is a complex problem. So to think that everything's going to be clear, easily understood, and easily decided is naive. So, I'll certainly try to trying to do better with communication, but a pretty large percentage of my day, almost every day, is spent on communication, you know, individually and groups and updates and outreach, so.
Well,
Yeah.
back to my usual thing in life, although I'm not gonna make it, putting this aside, it might be time to
I
get a motion
agree.
on the table.
So do we feel like if we were to say, no, I want a clarification. I just want a clarification. Do we feel like we could get through, like, we have enough time to work through things or we know maybe the teacher, I don't know. Is it enough time to say that when they come back, or the start of the third quarter, that's 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Okay.
you know, just in the last couple of days, we've been able to firm up answers to several questions that were kind of hanging out there.
Okay.
And I think we've made progress on even the toughest one right now. I don't know what the answer will be on that one, but,
Okay.
so, you know, I think things can be done. And in terms of what's right, this is very difficult because you know, you've heard me say too for quite some time, it's a priority to have students in school. I mean, I think that's important to our community. I think it's good for our kids. And I've received a lot of thanks for the fact that we've had kids in school 5 days a week all year. So I'm not an anti-kids in school person. I yearn for normalcy. But on the flip side, I think, you know, I do recognize how hard people are working and the stress people are under. And, you know, this has been a situation where, when it comes right down to it, it's, you know, as a leader, very tough for me to ignore how people are feeling what they're saying. So, I mean, that's you know, if you want to talk about mixed messages or being torn, you know, I've been feeling that for quite some time. And I think that's what makes it a tough decision. That's what makes it difficult for me to make a recommendation too. But that's why I said tonight too, I'm kind of focused on the structural things, the things that have to be in place to make it realistic, to make it happen. You know, things like transportation and staffing and what time you're going to do this or that. I think we've made a lot of strides to get those resolved. So in terms of the can we do it, we're definitely moving toward that. Can we do it? Should we do it? You know, a couple different
Can.
questions.
We're comfortable with the can part.
Yeah, I'm getting increasingly more comfortable with the can. We're really problem solving and having all the conversations we need to have to work that out.
Okay.
I would just say too, in response to your question, Ben, about what we're seeing, I would say over the last, couple decades in administration, that just seeing how instructional changes have moved, and that we do have kind of a number of hours that the state requires us to be on site, or here's been the typical school day, and the way kids learn has been changing. Many of them are very successful learning asynchronously on their own time and learning time management and being organized. Other kids need a lot more adult intervention and support and different connections. So there's such a spectrum of needs for kids and what works for them. And that's really, I think, how schools need to change, is to personalize more what we're providing in order to meet those needs. So I am concerned for some students that going more remote time increases screen time. It flips them more to learning in the morning versus the afternoon 90 minutes. So it is a significant change for those families in scheduling and amount of time and just the nature of learning. So it is, I think, I can only believe that would be, how do we continue to personalize to meet the needs of the kids? And after being the administrator that worked with our K-12 guidance department for 11 years, I just became more and more aware and learning from that team of teachers and counselors that making sure kids feel safe and connected in those relationships then gets them to learn. If we can't keep building that, it doesn't matter what we put in front of them from the screen, remote, or on site. We have to have that first. So I just offer that a little bit in terms of how my beliefs and approach to education has changed over the years.
Do you think some of those kids may come back if they think, if they're going to lose their normal teacher and they're gonna have to do more online, more Zooms, obviously there's that teacher that's hired to do that is gonna be doing more Zoom than originally than just 1 hour a day.
Those are things that have
Or
to be
every other
discussed.
day.
Yeah, all of those factors.
Some of those kids may come back.
But we have to help families make that decision to best give them the information so that they can make that best decision for what fits for them, so.
Right.
Again,
Go Ken.
Ken said he wasn't going to.
no, you're not going to.
No.
Good. So-
Okay, I'll make the motion. I think this might be my first motion.
Yeah, there you go.
Go for it.
Why not now? Best topic ever. So I make a motion that we bring elementary kids to a full day pending that we can hire a virtual teacher for special education. We have to put in there,
The Wednesday.
we have to add the Wednesday or the commitment for 9 weeks.
I wouldn't say the Wednesday, I wouldn't say the commence for 9
No, I
weeks,
think-
but I would have to, you'd have to put a date in there, like the start of second semester.
So
I
beginning,
would recommend.
beginning January 20th.
Let me read the motion
Yeah.
here for a second. Sorry, I'm probably not as good a typist as John is. Okay. Sue Wilson moved that elementary students return to full-time on-site instruction January 20th, 2021, pending the hiring of a virtual special education teacher.
Do we have to put that 90 days in there that, or 9 weeks? Do we have to put the 9-week thing?
No, I don't think we need, I mean, to me, that's a management thing we plan to do, communicate anyway. I don't think that, I mean, the board, determining instructional model is definitely a board, action, but I don't think we need to have that in there. Now, maybe the 90-minute on-site, I mean, if that could be construed as a calendar change, since our original calendar had a 1 hour layout, that would normally be one thing. So you could probably add that to the motion if you wanted to.
Yeah. we'll go
Yeah,
ahead.
because it's not 90.
Nothing good, do I?
Not yet, it's pretty good.
And that still gives them enough hours, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
so,
So the only thing I was thinking is, let's say worst case scenario, we don't find someone, or someone doesn't accept positions or whatever. It seems like we should have some kind of we don't want it lingering, I mean, we want parents to be able to plan for it. So I think there should be some kind of
a time to notify.
a time to notify, or like, where do
So
we
how
draw the line and say it's just too late to throw that at people?
Right. I would say, I liked Ken's idea of the 3-week notice.
So 3 weeks
We
would
come
be-
back on January 4th, and that would be, well, we have 8 weeks, so that would be 2 full weeks. The 20th is on a Wednesday, the following week.
Okay, I mean, I don't know what the number is, but I just. feel
Actually,
like
you'd have
there
to,
should be
wouldn't we have to notify them on the 28th to make it a full 3 weeks?
If you want a full 3 weeks.
If you wanted full 3 weeks. I don't know. Where did you come, did you have a reason for 3
Wait,
weeks,
with the
Ken?
3 weeks?
Or the time they were hired, or, yeah, that's what I didn't know.
I'm coming at this from the point of, you gotta give parents time to arrange
Right.
I agree.
I
to
get it.
change what it is. That's why 3 weeks came from where most of my things do, just out of the sky, because it sounded, makes
By
sense.
January 4th.
But the other thing I want to point out is that this is elementary. If it happens, it's not as important that it happens exactly at the start of the semester. If it's a week after that, to give the notice, I wouldn't think that's a deal breaker. You know, I think, that makes it nice and clean, but it's not like
You know,
Miller
it
High School.
could, as Ms. Kelly indicated too, it could come down a little bit, even if we get a right candidate, person that can do it, who agrees to do it, their situation could
Yeah,
be a timing thing too. You know, even if we come to an agreement tomorrow or Monday or whatever, they may not be available until the day of the 20th, and there might be some training and, you know, so a little bit of wiggle room's nice. I don't know the way to say it exactly. I agree with you. I think we should give parents whatever notice we can. But
What, could we just say to start, instead of a hard date, could we say to start with 3 weeks' notice given to parents to begin?
I think
Should
you
have
almost
a
have
target
to
date,
be
I
on too,
think.
otherwise they'll not have time.
What's that?
I think if we communicate, if people watch this or, if we communicate what we're doing with the expectation that we will get back to you, so they at least know that something's in the air, that, it's possible that we're going to do that, and then that we'll confirm it with at least 2 weeks' notice before it happens,
Right.
or something like that.
So they
Makes
know at
sense.
least they need to have
Right.
game plan
They
A
can
and
start
B.
thinking about it during the
Right.
holidays, like what happens if I do this? Okay, that means I'm
Right.
picking up at 2 buildings, not
Yeah.
one, and,
Yeah,
kind of working through their logistics.
that makes,
Well, I know some things I heard, just one point that I heard from one family member that kind of reminisced was, if we go back to 3, she said, I can stay and work and get my hours
Yeah.
and not,
Have to go to part-time.
she goes, right now I stop, I run home, get the kids from 1:30, and then I've got to make up my hours somewhere, so then it's 6 or 7 before we sit down and have supper. So her comment resonated several times with several families.
And there's a lot of us out there, like I will have 2 kids in an elementary and a middle school, and you're right, we are brainstorming how to make it work.
so this is what I think I heard you say, Sue. Sue Wilson moved that elementary students return to full-time on-site instruction January 20th, 2021, or as soon as possible, pending the hiring of a virtual special education teacher. There will be a 90-minute early release for teacher collaboration in connection with quarantine students. Parents will be given at least 2 weeks' notice before a change.
on Wednesdays, did you have 90 minutes on?
Thank you, yep.
On Wednesday.
Yep, thank you. I need to say on Wednesdays, yep.
So no matter what, we would give parents 2-week notice. Whether we start the 20th or we start the February 11th. I mean, we still get 2-week
I don't think that's
notice.
going to be a problem. I mean, I think as we work with candidates, as we look at training needs when they can wrap up, I think we're going to.
It just depends if that hire can't occur, if then you're going to involuntarily transfer anyone.
Well, we know a lot of it, everything depends on.
I think this gives us.
No pressure, Mimi.
It depends on you.
Moves us forward.
No pressure.
Gives some clarity for people.
So Jay,
So could we kind of try to, I don't know, like, advocate?
Right.
Website?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
An independent advocate will do
You
a
start
story.
texting, everybody's going to
Get
know
involved
on
with it.
Facebook.
They'll do a story. We'll push out, we'll communicate different ways.
Well, and the text messages that come out.
Yeah.
So we'll use our bright arrow, we'll put things out on Facebook.
so really we would let all families know that this would happen by the 6th if it really is at that earliest date.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
can't, and I'd be surprised if it takes that long.
Okay.
And I think if we do have a decision, the sooner the better, even if it's still January 20th, just.
I agree, we would, if we know
Right.
one way or the other, we're not gonna drag it out. The difference would be, if the leads we have right now don't pan out, then we're gonna continue looking, so.
So will we have to have another meeting to approve?
Probably
No?
not, because we've got the action
It's
in
an
place
existing.
tonight. Now, you do have a January 11th.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I would recommend an electronic meeting if they need to, okay, a contract.
Right.
On Zoom?
No, just on the phone.
Oh.
Can we hire it's a one-person hire thing.
Okay, motion made by Sue. Do we need to read it one more time? Everything's on it, or?
Sue Wilson moved that elementary students return to full-time on-site instruction January 20th, 2021, or as soon as possible, pending the hiring of a virtual special education teacher. There will be a 90-minute early release for teacher collaboration in connection with quarantine students on Wednesdays. Parents will be given at least 2 weeks' notice before a change.
Motion made by Sue,
I'll second.
seconded by Carolyn. Any further discussion by the rest of the board? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I don't oppose.
Motion carries 6-1.
I move to adjourn. Can I do that quick? No.
Yes. Ken made a motion to adjourn,
I'll second.
seconded by Carolyn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.
Will you let us know what you need, Mimi, then?
Ken and Carolyn on that?
Say
On the adjournment? Ken and Carolyn, is that who made the motion?
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you.
No.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Hopefully I don't see you.
Yeah.
Oh, kid.
We're gonna need to meet Chris.
So what time is it?
I don't know.
You wanna see us for Christmas?
Rob's got the party scheduled.
You can come see me at the Helping Hand on Christmas Eve.
Oh, yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
Santa has.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Take care.
Merry Christmas, Ken.
Thank you.